Acknowledgement. The area now known as Chatham-Kent is the traditional territory of the Three Fires Confederacy, the Ottawa, Potawatomi, and Ojibwe. The Lenape also inhabited these lands at the time of the written treaties. We also acknowledge the Indigenous peoples who traveled these lands before the written treaties. Today, Chatham-Kent neighbors the Lenape at El Napawi, Lackaweet, also called Delaware Nation at Moravian Town, and the unceded territory of Bakajwanong, Wapua Island First Nation. Chatham-Kent continues to be home to diverse First Nation, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Chatham-Kent is covered by Treaty 2, the Detroit Treaty of 1790, Treaty 7, Sombre Treaty of 1796, and Treaty 25, Longwoods Treaty of 1822. We also recognize that this region is subject to earlier wampum agreements, like the two-row wampum and the dish with one spoon wampum. As beneficiaries of these treaties, we recognize our responsibilities, including collective responsibilities to the land and water. Please be seated. Mr. Mayor, we do not have a supplementary agenda this evening. Rules of decorum at a council meeting. The municipality of Chatham-Kent supports open meetings that welcome debate of public policy issue in an atmosphere of inclusiveness, integrity, civility, fairness, and respect for differing points of view. Anyone conducting themselves in a way that disturbs, disrupts, or impedes the orderly conduct of the meeting, interrupts or makes derogatory statements, or hate speech, defamatory comments about councillors, staff, speakers, or fellow members of the public may result in removal from the premises. This also applies to deputations. We ask that you do not approach council members if they are seated in their council seats. The public, unless invited, is not permitted to come into the gated horseshoe area. The use of posters, signage, and literature is also prohibited. Mr. Mayor, we have two councillors participating virtually, Councillor C. McGregor and Councillor McGrail. And we have one disclosure of pecuniary interest. That is Councillor Harrigan with regards to item 16A, the Family Physicians 2025 funding and incentive update. We'll now move on to recognition. We have an artist featured, Dorothy Wright Wallace, regarding Black History Month, and the artist Lana Maskvick's portrait of Olive Albee. And I'll pass that over to Councillor Crew.
Thank you, Judy. Dorothy Wright Wallace is one of 10 Wright children, has called Chatham her home for her entire life. Living only a block from the house that she grew up in, on the east side of Chatham, the city's historically Black neighborhood. 8 years ago, Dorothy wanted to help out the community that raised her and became the president of the Chatham-Kent Black Historical Society and the Black Mecca Museum after volunteering on the board of directors. Since then, Dorothy has enjoyed sharing her stories of life and growing up in Chatham with visitors from across the world. It's also to be noted that Dorothy is also the CK Senior of the Year for 2025, and recently, Dorothy was named the first Black History Ambassador to the University of Guelph, an honor that will take her to the university 2 to 3 times a year to meet with students and share her incredible knowledge of Black history. Ladies and gentlemen, my friend Dorothy Wallace.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councilors, members of the public, and members of staff. Thank you for inviting me to speak tonight about Black history. For me, Black history is every day. I would like to pay homage to Mrs. Olive Albee, the matriarch of our neighborhood, and whose portrait was painted last year by Lana Mastiff. Lana is a member of the Ukraine Association of Virtual Arts of Canada. Her works have won awards in international art competitions, has been auctioned in and of the Ukraine and displayed at the Ukraine Consulate in Toronto, and is the permanent collection of the Ukraine Canadian Art Foundation, as well as in private collections in Canada, United States, and Ukraine. Lana is here tonight and will stand, and this portrait will also be featured in her upcoming show at the Thames Art Gallery in April. Lana is a resident of Chatham-Kent and is very active in the art and culture community. And we are so grateful that she has captured Mrs. Olive's essence in this portrait. Chatham has a lot of treasures, one being Mrs. Olive, and who was going to be with us, but at 99, the weather is a little too much for her. Another treasure that I would like to talk about tonight is Miss Sophie Bernadette Jones, who I would like to discuss with you. Sophie Jones was born in 1857 and was educated right here in the city of Chatham. She is the daughter of James Monroe. He was a gunsmith and was part of the community and also was an abolitionist. So she was very much, what would you say, very much knowing what was going on. She had the strength and courage and determination and was very much influenced by the associations of her father and of people she was around, like Dr. Delaney and other Black doctors that were in this city. She attended the University of Toronto to complete the Bachelor's of Biology. However, she was not accepted into the medical school. And not only that, she was Black, but no other woman was offered that at that time. She later accepted at the University of Toronto, of Michigan. She went there. She passed, and she is Michigan's first Black doctor. I was 60 years old when I heard this story. Not having role models the way we do, like we should do, it bothered me. And I felt like I wish I would have had this knowledge. Maybe I wouldn't let fear take over me the way it did in parts of my life if I had known what this lady went forward and did. To me, she is one of my role models, and I try to give back the way she did. She established programs, and she also had her writings and practiced her medicine all through the United States. We at the Chatham Black History Society are honored to share her story with visitors as it mirrors many stories of the community, stories of rejection and resilience. She is a role model of Black excellency and is a hero of the community. The board of Chatham-Kent Black Historical Society would like to commission a full-length sculpture of Dr. Jones with her doctor bag. There are a lot of exciting things taking place in Chatham-Kent. Thank you and good night.
We'll now move on to the deputations. Sorry, yeah, you can.
Just before we get into deputations, I know we have a number of them, and just tonight we'll be dealing with 3 items. We'll only be talking about these 3 items at the council meeting. Everything else is going to go into the consent agenda, which means it's passed. So if the 3 items we're not talking about are not on that means whatever they are passed. I just want to let everyone know, because I know a lot of people here are interested in 16C, which is on the consent agenda, which means it's unanimously passed by council. So I just want people to know about that. We're doing a family physician update, encampment advisory recommendations, and harm reduction discussion. So those are the 3 we will be talking about after the deputations. Thank you.
We received 12 deputations this evening, so we have 1 email only, and that is from Cheryl Ann Merriman on item 16C, the motion of Councillor Crew regarding Chatham-Kent N13 licensing bylaw. We have 2 on the virtual call this evening. First speaker will be Douglas Kwan. He's speaking on item 16C, motion of Councillor Crew regarding the Chatham-Kent N13 licensing bylaw, and on deck will be Cindy. Douglas? Sorry, for all deputations this evening, you have a maximum of 5 minutes. The time will be on the screen for your convenience. Mr. Kwan, you're welcome to go ahead.
Clinic that advances tenants' rights. I have appeared before council a couple of years ago on another matter regarding the Landlord Tenant Board. Today I'm here to support a renoviction bylaw. I provide you a copy with presentation, as I understand it's been emailed to all the members today. I'm here to advocate for a renoviction bylaw because what we're seeing across the province are many municipalities, large and small, lower tier and upper tier, who are in the midst of passing their own renovation bylaw, or they have already passed it and are experiencing a tremendous decrease in the number of renovictions in their communities. And the reason why municipalities are pushing forward renovation bylaws is the fact that they're seeing many long-term tenants, many seniors who are being pushed out of their homes under the guise that their unit needs to be renovated and vacant possession is necessary, when in most situations they're not. But unscrupulous landlords across the province are taking this renovation route to evict tenants in order to have the unit turned over in hopes of doubling or even tripling the rent that they can receive from that unit. So when I talk about communities large and small, I'm talking about the town of Perth is considering their passing their own renovation bylaw. The city of Mississauga is considering their own renovation bylaw. The city of Kitchener, which is a lower tier municipality compared to the Waterloo region, is also considering, is asking staff, I should say, to provide them with a renovation bylaw. So many municipalities are in the midst of looking at their own renovation bylaw, because the key is they want to preserve these affordable units for their low income and moderate income tenants who've been living in their community for a number of years and contributing to their community. One of the reasons why this necessitates a municipal response is that the province had passed legislation almost 3 years ago where they acknowledged the challenges and the problems that tenants were experiencing with rent evictions that were happening at the time. And they passed legislation that would have increased fines, that would have required landlords to obtain a third-party expert to provide their opinion that vacant possession was necessary. There were several measures that would have enhanced the Residential Tenancies Act to protect tenants. Unfortunately, as I said, 3 years have now passed. Although the law was passed and is now incorporated in legislation, it has yet to be enforced. And for whatever reasons, we're now sitting at 3 years, and the government does not appear to be at all interested in enforcing those minimum level of protections. And so municipalities are acting, and in fact, they're not only increasing fines and ensuring that third parties can provide their opinion for vacant possession, they're also providing measures that would dissuade rent evictions from taking place in the first place. Measures such as ensuring that landlords pay for moving expenses, measures such as landlords paying for the difference between the rent that a tenant is paying now compared to what they were paying in the previous unit. That way, that rent gap that they would be responsible for is a measure to ensure that landlords can't just simply sit on their hands to ensure that the renovation takes place and is complete on time. So those are some examples of what municipalities are doing. The City of London also has increased penalties for bad actors as well. And so there's a lot of great examples. And by the time, hopefully, if council approves a rent eviction bylaw, we're going to have approximately a year or even 18 months of evidence to demonstrate the value of renovation bylaws, because that's when Hamilton and Toronto went online, and that's also when London went online. So subject to any questions this committee has, that is my submission for today, and thank you for listening to my delegation.
Thank you, Mr. Kwan. Next speaker is Cindy Malachowski. Item 17C, motion of Councillor Jubenville regarding harm reduction services at Pathways on Park. Go ahead, Cindy.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. My name is Cindy Malachowski, and thank you again for the opportunity to speak this evening. I come to this discussion from multiple vantage points. I worked for more than a decade as a frontline occupational therapist in tertiary mental health care. I also hold a PhD in rehabilitation science from the University of Toronto, and I completed a postdoc fellowship in public health policy at the University of Waterloo, with over 30 peer-reviewed publications focusing on systems, outcomes, and implementation. Today, I'm also a property and business owner in downtown Oshawa, where I experience the downstream effects of our housing and opioid crisis every single day. So I'm here not only with academic and clinical training, but with lived operational experience of how policy decisions translate into real-world outcomes for vulnerable individuals, for neighborhoods, and for communities trying to function safely and humanely. I'm here to speak in support of this motion not from an ideological position, but from a policy implementation and accountability lens. I want to be very, very clear on the outset. I'm not here to debate harm reduction versus recovery. That framing has stalled progress in many communities. What matters is whether our systems are aligned, if they're safe, and producing measurable outcomes. The core problem this motion correctly identifies is misalignment. Pathways on Park is a municipally supported transitional housing site with the expectation that safety, order, and compliance with site rules, including restrictions on substance use. At the same time, harm reduction supplies are being delivered in ways that assume use will occur. When rules and services contradict each other, behavior doesn't stop. Misalignment creates predictable consequences, disorder, community tension, and unclear accountability. And it creates the very neighborhood impacts that council is being asked to address. It's not a moral failure, it's actually a design failure. And this is why this motion is the right starting point. It doesn't rush to ban services impulsively, it doesn't deny health risks, and it doesn't pretend that there are any simple answers. But instead, what it does is what good governance should do. It directs staff to review alignment, assess impacts, consider options, mitigate displacement, which is the biggest predictable failure here, and report back with evidence. I would respectfully suggest that when staff report back in 30 or 60 days, council require 4 concrete things. First, a clear service map. Who's delivering what, where, under what authority, what rules, and what the supervision and disposal practices are. Secondly, a displacement and risk assessment. If supply delivery is modified, relocated, or supervised differently, where does behavior realistically shift, and how will those impacts be managed? Third, a set of operational options with real trade-offs, including supervised and contained on-site models, off-site delivery with mitigation, perimeter management, staffing levels, and enforcement coordination. Council should see the pros, the cons, the costs, and the risks of each option. And fourth, ongoing public reporting. This includes data and an accountability plan. Who owns the data? How will it be collected? How often will Council see it? What triggers a policy adjustment? If we can't measure these outcomes, we can't claim any success. When we operate on belief, good intentions, and ideological underpinnings, we can't measure actual change in our community. If Council wants trust, it needs visibility. At a minimum, I would urge Council to require a simple 6-month public dashboard that includes police, fire, and EMS calls for service by zone, overdose response on site and nearby, needle and litter complaints and cleanup volumes, resident and neighbor safety indicators, perhaps through standardized surveys, housing stability and transitions where available, retention rate in cabins, exits to permanent housing, and engagement with treatment supports when and where available. If outcomes improve, you should say so publicly, and if they don't, you need to adjust. This isn't punishment, it's just good stewardship. This motion doesn't choose a side. Everyone wants fewer deaths and safer neighborhoods. This motion is about operational clarity and accountability. It chooses responsibility, and it forces a system to align with what it says it does and to show the community the results. I urge Council to support it, requiring clear reporting and commitment to evidence-informed adjustments as results become visible. The decision you make tonight will be felt somewhere, by those inside the cabins and by those living next door. Alignment, transparency, and measurable outcomes are how Council shows it's governing a crisis responsibly, not managing appearances. All of your constituents are counting on that. Thank you for your time this evening and for the responsibility that you carry on behalf of every resident who will live with the consequences of this decision.
Thank you. The remaining of the deputations are in person here. The first item is item 16C, the motion of Councillor Crew regarding Chatham-Kent N13 licensing bylaw. First speaker is Jeff Wilkins. On deck is Gord Harvey.
Good evening, Your Worship, Mayor Caniff, and councillors of Chatham-Kent. My name is Jeff Wilkins, and I'm here on behalf of the Chatham-Kent Legal Clinic. I speak to you tonight in support of Councillor Crew's motion regarding an N13 bylaw. An N13 notice is a notice that the landlord uses if they want to end a tenancy because the landlord wants to demolish, repair, or convert the unit to another use. When a landlord serves an N13 notice on the tenant, he must give the tenant 1 to 3 months compensation or rent, depending on the size of the building, will obtain the necessary permits, and must let the tenant move back into the unit called right of first refusal at the same rent as was charged before the renovation. Very frequently, tenants will move out without having a hearing. In these cases, landlords are not required to file an application or attend a hearing where they would need to prove their case for eviction. This is problematic because quite often the landlord won't file the notice with the landlord and tenant board and will not do the repairs that the tenant was evicted for in the first place. All too often, landlords will use an N13 notice to remove tenants and eventually increase the rent. This has happened in Chatham-Kent in the past. In these cases, the landlord cited serious problems with asbestos, for example, and the tenants had moved out on a cash for keys deal. In these cases, the asbestos remediation did not get done, and the units were re-rented for double, sometimes triple the rent. The status quo of the N13s does not work because tenants rarely know their rights, and they view the N13 as an eviction notice. Some landlords do not take the time to explain the process to the tenants. Often landlords say they require the unit for several months, leaving the tenant to try to find a place to live for the whole time that they will be displaced. This creates a real risk of homelessness. Municipalities across Ontario are turning their attention to N13 bylaws. Some of these municipalities include Ottawa, Wasaga, Orillia, and Mississauga. Other municipalities have passed an N13 bylaw. These include London, Hamilton, Waterloo, Guelph, and Toronto. In these municipalities, service of N13 notices to tenants has dropped dramatically. An N13 bylaw ensures landlord accountability and requires them to communicate with the tenants through the whole process. The N13 bylaws vary from municipality to municipality, but most cover the following basics. The municipal license. If a landlord requires vacant possession of the unit to do repairs, they must first obtain a license from the municipality. The application process requires building permits, copies of all the required permits for the proposed work, professional confirmation, a report from a qualified professional such as an architect or an engineer confirming that the rental unit must be vacant to perform the work. Tenant information, proof that the tenant was provided with a tenant and landlord's rights and obligation information package, and a timeline. Landlords must typically apply for this notice within a short window, example 7 days after serving the N13 notice. Typically, such bylaws affirm the rights for tenants to move back into their units after renovations at the same rent, with the city now playing a role in monitoring this through the licensing process. An N13 bylaw can also introduce some resources to assist tenants facing displacement. An important feature of the N13 bylaw is that landlords who fail to comply with the bylaw can face significant fines. In conclusion, the Chatham-Kent Legal Clinic fully supports the proposed motion. As a community, we need to more effectively address the loss of affordable rental housing, the undue displacement of tenants, the increased housing stability, and the ever-increasing problems of homelessness in Chatham-Kent. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Gord Harvey. On deck is Laura Jasper.
Mayor Caniff and members of council, thank you for my opportunity to speak today. My name is Gord Harvey, and I'm here to speak in support of developing a rent eviction bylaw in Chatham-Kent. I'm here as a tenant, a longtime Chatham resident, and along with my wife, someone who's experiencing firsthand with our neighbors at the Terrace 40 apartment building, the effect of everyone in our building receiving N13 eviction notices. On December 17th, 2025, the estate of the previous owner notified us that the building had been sold. On Friday, January 16th, 2026, we learned the name of the new owner through a letter with an attached N13 eviction notice that was left outside, dropped on the floor outside our apartment doors. The N13 notice appeared to list an eviction date of May 31st, 2026, from the new owner, which included a cash for keys offer of $5,000 with a deadline of March 31st, 2026 to voluntarily agree to end our tenancy and leave our homes. In the days that followed, people began talking to one another in the hallways. Those conversations shared a common thread. I haven't slept. How can this be happening? I have nowhere to go. I can't pay double the rent. I'm going to end up on the streets. Terrace 40 is largely occupied by people like my wife and I, retired seniors living on fixed incomes. Two of the neighbors on our floor are 91 years old, and we have a tenant in our building who is 96 years old and has been in the building for 31 years. For all of us at Terrace 40, receiving an N13 eviction notice wasn't an inconvenience. It was in fact a crisis. Without challenging these evictions, it means scrambling to find housing in a market with low vacancy rates and rapidly rising rents. It means losing proximity to doctors, family, transit, and community supports. It means stress, uncertainty, and the potential displacement from Chatham-Kent altogether. The intent of a rent eviction bylaw is not to stop legitimate renovations. It's not to punish responsible landlords. It's not to interfere with property rights. What it does is introduce clarity, transparency, and accountability. Such a bylaw can require proof that renovations truly require vacancy, ensure tenants are properly informed of their rights, establish timelines and tracking for renovation work, provide enforcement mechanisms, and protect tenants from being displaced under false or misleading pretenses. These safeguards respond directly to issues that have arisen at Terrace 40. And why should this matter to Chatham-Kent? We want to attract workers, families, and seniors. We want stable neighborhoods. We want people to age in place. We want economic growth without hollowing out our communities. When tenants have nowhere affordable to go, the costs don't disappear, they shift. And they shift to social services, to health care, to emergency housing, and to families that are already stretched thin. A rent eviction bylaw is not anti-growth at all. It's pro-community stability. I'd like to take advantage to acknowledge, many of my neighbors at Terrace 40, including those in their 90s, who are here tonight on a cold February evening, fighting back not only for themselves, but for every tenant in Chatham-Kent. Council has the opportunity, and I would argue the responsibility, to put reasonable safeguards in place. I respectfully urge all of you to move forward with developing a rent eviction bylaw for Chatham-Kent, informed by best practices from other municipalities. Thank you for your time and for considering the real impact that N13 evictions have on real people in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Laura Jasper. On deck is Nicole LaBelle.
On December 15th to oppose my landlord's proposal to rezone and subdivide our units.
Laura, could you just push the red button in front on the microphone? The speaker button, like the middle button, the big button. There, now the red light's on. Sorry, I should have been clearer. Yes, please.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. I'm Laura Jasper. I was here on December 15th, 2025 to oppose my landlord's proposal to rezone and subdivide our units. I live in a fourplex in Chatham for 12 years, along with 3 out of 4 units paying pre-COVID rent. My landlord wants to split 2 existing 3-bedroom apartments into 4 one-bedroom units, turning a fourplex into a 6-plex. These are well below market long-term homes. We don't even know which units are going to be affected. It could be mine. It could be my daughter who lives below me with my grandchildren. We didn't even hear this from our landlord. If it wasn't for a mention from a neighbor, this application that night could have been passed, and our first official notice would have been an N13, an eviction. All the property owners in my surrounding area were given notices, but as tenants, we were not included in the process that was being proposed, which was in the end going to affect all of us. Our notice was a sign on a hydro pole in the front of our house. When the landlord was later questioned, he said, it's early stages, we didn't need to know. Yet he already had plans, an agent, and a council date. That means my home could have simply disappeared. This is not maintenance. It's a structural transformation that removes family-size affordable housing and replaces it with similar, more expensive units. There was already a vacant 3-bedroom unit in my building. He could have waited for approval. Instead, he rented it to a family at market price. That tells me this isn't about timing at all. It's an urgency to maximize units and future rent regardless of who gets displaced. My situation is not isolated. We are all here about Terrace 40. 40 long-term tenants, most paying pre-COVID rent, facing eviction for up to 8 or more months for renovations. 40 households at once. This is not renovation. This is mass displacement and possible homelessness. Different buildings, different landlords, same playbook. Remove affordable tenants, reconfigure units, return with higher rents. Whether it's one home like mine or 40, the result is the same. People lose their homes, so more profitable ones can take their place. I understand that there is a we want to pass a stronger N13 bylaw. And I appreciate that because my experience shows exactly why these protections are necessary. Again, our landlord had a plan, an agent, and a city council meeting already set up to rezone and subdivide units without any notice to his tenants. And I thank my neighbor for telling me that. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had time to put in my deposition. I am not against reasonable renovations. Buildings need maintenance, safety matters, but this is being proposed here and at Terrace 40 is not a repair, it's replacement, not improvement. If 40-plus people can be removed at once, then no tenant in Chatham-Kent is truly secure. This is why this bylaw matters. This is not about punishing landlords, it's about drawing a line that says you cannot erase people's homes without clear, legitimate, and necessary reasons. Housing is not just an investment, it's where people live their lives. In my case, a 1 or a 3-bedroom unit is not just square footage, it's where I sleep, cook, rest, and feel safe. At Terrace 40, each of those 40 units represent the same thing. So I urge you to pass a strong N13 bylaw, one that prevents evictions for renovations, demolitions that are mainly about increasing units and rent rather than preserving homes. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Nicole LaBelle. On deck is Sarah Molnar.
Good evening, Mayor and member councils. I'm Nicole. I was here December 15th to oppose my landlord's proposal to subdivide our units. I have been a tenant in a fourplex in Chatham for 10 years, paying pre-COVID rent. My landlord wants to subdivide to make it a fourplex into a sixplex. Right now, we don't even know which homes will be affected. It could be mine and my children's home, or my mother's, or both. Its uncertainty sits with us every day. For my family, it's not a planning issue. It's more about whether my children get to stay in their home they know. What is being proposed is not a routine upkeep. It would remove family-sized, affordable homes and replace it with smaller, higher-rent units. That is a choice, not a necessity. There was already a vacant 3-bedroom unit in our building. Our landlord could have waited for all the planning and approval and renting it again, but he didn't. That tells me about the speed and profit, not need. Our experience is connected to what's happening at Terrace 40. 40 households, many long-term, below market, now face eviction for months of renovation. Different buildings, different landlords, same result. People pushed out, rents pushed up, and families displaced. I appreciate the mayor and councillor crew supporting stronger rules around N13 renovation evictions. I support that as well. I'm not against real renovations. Buildings need care, but we're seeing that in our building, Terrace 40 is a replacement, not repair. If affordable family-sized homes can be erased simply by calling it renovation, then affordable housing in Chatham isn't protected, it's uncertain. This bylaw matters because it sets a clear line. Homes cannot be taken without a real clear necessity reason. For me, this is about my children's stability and whether Chatham values families or just profits. I urge council to pass the strong bylaw on N13s that prevent evictions for renovations driven primarily by financial gain rather than a genuine need. Thank you.
Next speaker is Sarah Molnar.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Sarah Molnar. I'm here from Paragon Property Management. I do want to note that I am not the property manager of the two homes, but I am submitting this deputation to share concerns regarding the proposed N13 licensing, also referred to as renovation bylaw currently before Council. I want to begin by acknowledging the very real fear and stress experienced by tenants who face the possibility of being displaced from their homes. Housing stability is foundational to well-being, and concerns raised by tenants deserve empathy, seriousness, and thoughtful solution. My concern is that while this proposed bylaw is well-intentioned, it will not achieve the protection it promises and may unintentionally worsen housing outcomes for tenants in Chatham-Kent. To clarify the proposal, this is a renovation license. Despite being referred to as a rent eviction bylaw, the proposal before council is not a ban on rent evictions. It is municipal renovation licensing framework similar to those implemented in Hamilton, London, and Toronto. These bylaws require landlords to obtain municipal license after issuing a lawful N13 notice under Ontario's Residential Tenancy Act. This licensing framework does not replace provincial law, does not prohibit N13 evictions, duplicates an already strict legal process, adds administration steps, fees, delays, and enforcement mechanisms. The motion itself acknowledges that implementation would require significant staff resources and new enforcement capacity, citing 6 additional staff in London, 8 additional staff in Hamilton. This is not minor administration change. This is the creation of a parallel regulatory system layered on top of an existing provincial oversight. The existing N13 process is already lengthy and strict. Under Ontario law, an N13 eviction may only be used for major renovations that require vacant possession, not cosmetic upgrades. The process already requires a minimum of 120 days notice, mandatory financial compensation to tenants, building permits, the ability for tenants to remain and force a hearing, the landlord and tenant board hearing, proof of good faith, completion of the renovation, and the unit must be offered back to the tenants at the same rate. With current landlord and tenant board delays, this process often takes many months or more than a year. This is why N13 evictions account for less than 2% of all evictions in Ontario. Landlords do not pursue N13s unless absolutely necessary. They are costly, slow, risky, and heavily scrutinized. Why this bylaw will not stop displacement. This bylaw is responding less to a widespread pattern of abuse and more to a media-driven narrative. Bad faith N13 evictions are already illegal. The issue is not the lack of rules. It's fear, misinformation, and unequal understanding of rights. A municipal license does not prevent conversations between tenants and landlords. It does not eliminate the possibility of displacement, and it does not change provincial eviction law. What it risks doing is giving tenants a false sense of security, the belief that displacement cannot occur when legally it still can. When expectations don't match reality, trust in the system erodes, and the tenant-landlord divides deepen. The root cause that's being overlooked is financing. The most important factor affecting tenant stability is whether landlords can afford to maintain aging buildings. Today, banks require incomes to finance renovations. Rents are controlled and often too low to support new debt. Operating costs, insurance, labor, utilities, materials have all risen sharply. When income isn't sufficient, landlord cannot access financing or equity. This is especially true for small and medium-sized landlords who provide the majority of rental housing in Ontario. Without access to capital, repairs are delayed, buildings deteriorate, safety issues increase, municipal orders are issued, and eventually buildings are condemned. When that happens, tenants are displaced anyway, but now with fewer options and less stability. The broader housing reality in Ontario, approximately 86% of renters rely on the private market. Only 14% live in non-market or subsidized housing. There is no system prepared to absorb displaced tenants if private rental housing deteriorates or disappears. Policies that disencourage reinvestment in aging housing puts tenants at greater risk, even if the intention is protection. Okay, I'm losing time here. If council's goal is to protect tenants and prevent displacements, more effective approach is plain language tenant education about N13 rates, clear municipal resources and outreach, strong enforcement of existing building standards, advocacy to upper levels of government for renovation financing tools, exploration of renovation incentive programs or rent relief programs, and these approaches address the root causes of displacement rather than adding duplicate regulation. Okay, and I'm out of time.
Thank you. Council did receive everyone's deputation at noon today.
Thank you.
Next speaker is item 17B, motion of Councillor Sakachi regarding warming centers in communities beyond central Chatham. And the speaker is Renee Ginoli.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor Caniff, members of council, and municipal colleagues. My name is Renee Genioli, and I'm here on behalf of ROC, Reach Out Chatham-Kent, again, an organization that supports some of our most vulnerable community members, people experiencing houselessness, people who use substances, and people living with mental health challenges. I want to begin by sincerely thanking Councillor Sakachi for bringing forward this motion and for recognizing the very real need for warming stations in our rural communities throughout the winter months. While the current system was created with the intention of reducing harm, it is important to say out loud what many of us working on the ground already know. Transportation alone is not the solution. If we want to truly support people outside of Chatham, we need broader community-based supports. I'd like to offer my support for this motion by sharing what we're seeing through our Wallaceburg drop-in. Although the Wallaceburg drop-in currently operates as a daytime program, we also provide outreach services 3 to 4 days per week. Over the past year, we've watched the number of people living outdoors steadily increase. Our daily drop-in numbers now range from 50 to 75 people per day, and we know a significant portion of those individuals are experiencing houselessness. We've also seen growing frustrations in the community, particularly on social media, around people seeking shelter in vestibules and doorways. We've had many difficult but necessary conversations with members of the Wallaceburg BIA about how to support the downtown core while also supporting the people who quite literally have nowhere to go. Many of the individuals we serve are Indigenous, and even attempts to create a transportation program between Wallaceburg and Walpole Island First Nation drop-in centre have proven challenging. Transportation sounds like a simple answer on paper, but in reality, it often creates more barriers than it removes. And while we are incredibly grateful for the continued development of multi-agency response teams, such as the Pathways to Care or the Chatham Police Service and RAM Clinic collaboration, and the countless hours frontline workers put into tracking and supporting a highly transient population, the truth is this: none of us can respond all night and across all of Chatham-Kent to a growing number of people sleeping outside in extreme cold. We already know this issue is growing in Wallaceburg, our second largest population centre. It's not a stretch to say that other rural communities won't be far behind. I want to remind Council of one of the most impactful and alarming statistics we've seen recently. Predictions estimate 177,000 people will be experiencing houselessness in Ontario by 2035. That's less than 10 years away. In 2025 alone, houselessness increased by 8% across Ontario. And that increase isn't happening everywhere else. It's happening here too. And we see it every day, or we see it every single day firsthand. And I won't sugarcoat it, these numbers scare us. They scare frontline workers, they scare service providers, and they should concern all of us who care about the safety and well-being of our communities. This motion is an important step toward acknowledging that rural communities need localized, compassionate, and practical solutions. Warming centers save lives. They reduce harm, and they recognize that every person, regardless of where they live in Chatham-Kent, deserve warmth, safety, and dignity. Thank you for your time, and thank you for considering the motion.
Thank you. The next item is item 17C, the motion of Councillor Jubenville regarding harm reduction services at Pathways on Park. We have 3 speakers remaining. The first speaker is Janice Kirkwood. On deck is Marjorie Maharam, and third speaker is Larry Hutchins.
Good evening, Mayor Caniff, councillors, and fellow municipal colleagues. My name is Janice Kirkwood, and I am here on behalf of the Chatham-Kent Drug Awareness Council. We are a community-driven collaborative committee dedicated to awareness, education, and knowledge exchange that help our community prevent, treat, and reduce harms associated with substance use. Our membership includes community partners from across Chatham-Kent, concerned residents, and importantly, people with lived and living experience of substance use, as well as those impacted by their use. Our work is together because all of these issues affect all of us. Chatham-Kent Drug Awareness Council fully endorses the locally developed Chatham-Kent Community Drug Strategy, our community's comprehensive, evidence-informed response to the increasingly complex issues of substance use and houselessness. This strategy represents the collaboration of over 150 partners, 68 organizations, and more than 60 individuals with lived and living experience. It is built on 4-pillar framework of prevention, treatment and recovery, harm reduction, and community inclusion and safety. While each pillar has its own goals, we know that in practice these areas overlap every day. People's needs do not fit neatly into categories,
Real solutions require coordinated, flexible, multi-sector work. Simply put, we need all four pillars working together to meaningfully prevent and address harm at the individual, family, and community levels. We are already seeing important results. Local data shows that multi-sector initiatives such as the mobile outreach, drop-in services, supportive housing, and pathways to care program are reducing pressure on the healthcare system and improving health outcomes. Specifically, we have seen fewer emergency department visits, fewer hospitalizations, fewer readmissions, and 50% reduction in toxic drug deaths compared to 2024. Decades of research also shows that harm reduction is not only life-saving, it is cost-saving. For every dollar spent on naloxone, we yield an estimated $3,319 return on that investment. Every $1 invested in harm reduction services saves $27 in healthcare and social costs. Every $1 invested in peer-led overdose response saves more than $15. Mobile outreach generates a $36 return for every dollar spent. When we invest in harm reduction, we invest in fiscal responsibility, public health, and community safety. Harm reduction is grounded in one simple truth, that people cannot seek treatment or make long-term changes unless they are alive, supported, and connected, not excluded. Harm reduction is grounded in a simple, as part of the four-pillar framework, harm reduction supports the full spectrum of recovery goals that include abstinence, reduced use, stability, improved health, and safe housing. It also reduces the stigma by framing substance use as a health care issue, not a moral or a criminal one. It builds trust and creates an entry point into treatment and recovery options. It keeps people engaged in care even when their use might fluctuate. It provides accurate, practical education and reduces injury, infection, and fatality. It promotes safer public spaces and proper disposal practices, and it reduces strain on our emergency health services. Harm reduction works with prevention, with treatment, and with community safety. These are not competing approaches. They are complementary and all essential components of a healthy and responsive community. Tonight, the Chatham-Kent Drug Awareness Council encourages council to continue supporting and investing in the Chatham-Kent community drug strategy and its four-pillar approach. Together, we can build a community that is caring, inclusive, and safe, and also actively reducing harms, challenging stigma, and break down the systemic barriers associated with substance use and houselessness. Thank you for your time.
Next speaker is Marjorie Maharam. On deck is Larry Hutchins.
I don't come with subtitles, so I apologise if you can't understand the British accent. Good evening, Mayor Caniff, members of council and municipal colleagues. My name is Marjorie Maharam and I'm here representing ROC, Reach Out Chatham-Kent. And as Renee said earlier, we support some of our most vulnerable people in our community. Here today to speak in opposition to the motion put forward by Councillor Juberville regarding the distribution of harm reduction supplies at Pathways on Park. We find this motion deeply concerning and we appreciate the opportunity to address some common misconceptions about harm reduction and to explain why supporting, not restricting, these services is essential in Chatham-Kent. I could spend this time sharing personal stories of the lives saved, the dignities preserved, the families still intact because harm reduction exists. Those stories matter deeply, but tonight maybe we should focus on some facts. First, let's be clear about what harm reduction is not. Harm reduction is not enabling. It is not giving people drugs. Harm reduction is about acknowledging reality, that people will make their own choices and offering ways to reduce preventable harm when substance use occurs. If someone is going to use substances, regardless of whether services exist, providing sterile equipment allows them to do so more safely. The word enabling is often thrown around, but it's lost its meaning. Enabling would be ignoring risk and harm. Harm reduction does the opposite. It reduces risk, disease, and death. Until recently, Chatham-Kent had one of the highest rates of hepatitis C in Ontario. One of the most effective, evidence-based ways to reduce that rate is simple: open and reliable access to sterile equipment. Now let's talk about impact. Through coordinated harm reduction, positive collaboration across agencies in our community, we have seen fewer emergency department visits, fewer hospitalizations, fewer hospital readmissions, and a 50% reduction in toxic drug deaths compared to 2024. This work also aligns directly with the 4 pillars of the Chatham-Kent drug strategy. Harm reduction does not compete with prevention, treatment, or community safety. It strengthens them. People's lives do not fit neatly into silos, and effective solutions require flexible, coordinated, multi-sector approaches. Accessibility and engagement matter. A key principle of effective harm reduction is meeting people where they're at, rather than expecting people to travel to a single bricks and mortar location to access life-saving supplies. Many of the individuals who rely on pathways on park experience houselessness, limited mobility, chronic illness, or mental health challenges. Many have no reliable access to transportation. In winter months especially, asking people to travel further, often on foot, increases risk, not safety. When access is made more difficult, people do not stop using substances, but they do stop accessing safer supplies. This leads to increased needle sharing, higher risk of infection, more overdoses, and more emergency responses. Equally important, the distribution of harm reduction supplies is often the starting point for engagement. When we meet people where they are, we build trust. That trust allows for conversations about housing, healthcare, mental health supports, treatment options, income assistance, and safety planning. Restricting where harm reduction occurs does not just limit access to supplies, it weakens our ability to engage people in compassionate care and connect them to additional resources. Finally, harm reduction is most effective when it is accessible, predictable, and integrated into existing points of service. Displacing services does not eliminate harm, it just relocates it, often making it less visible but more dangerous. Thank you.
Thank you. And the final speaker this evening is Larry Hutchins.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, Council. I am before you tonight to speak on item 17C, Councillor Jubenville's motion concerning pathways on Park. I've struggled all weekend over this deputation because both the motion and administration's response have valid points. When we look at both positions, the correct pathway is obvious. It is to improve communication. Administration is correct. Harm reduction supplies and policy is the public health unit's responsibility, and Council has no authority to regulate their provision of supplies. This is provincial policy. However, dealing with the cleanup is also regulated as a public health responsibility and should come out of their budget. The drug litter that is left on private property is actually biohazardous waste, which is highly regulated by multiple provincial ministries and needs more cleanup than can be expected from a property owner. This could be alleviated by a needle syringe exchange program that public health is obligated to provide, but has not. This could be handled in a more private setting at the Wish Centre, where clean and used supplies could be exchanged without it adversely affecting the recovery and sobriety of fellow tenants at Pathways on Park. The fact that there have been 14 people evicted from the program for multiple violations of the program is a positive step. Complaints by neighbors of noise, waste, and needles being left strewn around could be handled by security and police in a manner consistent with local bylaws. That would lead to faster responses if they are dealt with at the time rather than being referred to housing services and rock missions to deal with later. That would mimic actual tenancy. The tenants of Pathways on Park that have moved on to full-time tenancy is excellent and should be celebrated by all. Finally, communication between the public and administration needs to improve. The current communication process is not adequate to meet the public's expectations. Administration may be proud of their programs and want to defend them. However, neighbors have legitimate concerns that need to be addressed. By bringing these complaints and concerns to administration, they are giving you valuable feedback. The lack of response to phone calls or emails by some in administration simply increases frustrations. That is poor practice, and it needs to be addressed in the entire municipality. Even the fact that no one has placed their name on the administration response to this motion is a sign that communication needs to be improved. By supporting this motion, Council is saying that they have heard the concerns of the neighbors and are willing to correct the problems for both tenants and neighbors of Pathways on Park. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Move on to the consent agenda. The following reports have been pulled to be voted on separately, and those items are 16A, Family Physicians 2025 Funding and Incentive Update. It's an information report and there will be a presentation. Item 17A, the Encampment Advisory Committee Appointment Recommendation has been pulled by myself for voting for the council appointments. And item 17C, motion of Councillor Jubenville regarding harm reduction services at Pathways on Park, pulled by Councillor Jubenville and Councillor Harrigan. Therefore, the following reports will be on the consent agenda to be voted on by one motion, and those items are 14A, B, C, D, E, and F, item 15A, item 16B and C, item 17B, and items 18A, B, and C.
Councillor Anderson and Councillor Sakatchi, can I get you to move the consent agenda, please?
I am happy to move the consent agenda.
Seconded.
Any questions? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor C. McGregor?
Yes.
All votes are in. Motion passes 16-0.
Go ahead, Councillor Crew.
Mr. Mayor, we have a full audience of folks that came probably from Terrace 40 and a few other places. That consent agenda means the motion passed, so you may go.
We'll give everybody a minute we'll take 1 minute break. We'll. Okay. Okay, perfect, thank you. Nope, I'm.
Yeah, we're going this way.
We'll give everybody 1 more minute to exit so we can continue with the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, we'll get started again. Item 16, Chief Administrative Office.
16A, Family Physicians 2025 Funding and Incentive Updates. I'll hand it over to Audrey Ansell, who is doing the introduction.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Audrey Ansell, Director of Community Culture and Connections. You have a report in front of you this evening regarding the financial supports that have been provided to new family physicians in the community. And this evening I have the privilege of introducing Rebecca Smith, who is a physician recruitment coordinator and a community engagement specialist with the Chatham-Kent, Ontario Health Team. So Rebecca will be presenting on the achievements of the CK Family Physician Recruitment and Retention Task Force. I would like to sincerely thank Rebecca and Sherry Saunders from the Chatham-Kent Community Health Centres for being here this evening to represent the task force. And with that, I am honoured to turn things over to Rebecca for her presentation. And Sherry.
Thank you, Audrey. Mayor Caniff, Chatham-Kent councillors, municipal staff, and fellow Chatham-Kent community members. My name is Rebecca Smith, and I'm the Physician Recruitment Coordinator and Community Engagement Specialist with the Chatham-Kent, Ontario Health Team. And we have Sherry Saunders along with me as the Executive Director with the Chatham-Kent Community Health Centres. And we're both here, as Audrey had mentioned, as representatives of the Chatham-Kent Family Physician Recruitment and Retention Task Force. So I'll give the formal presentation and we'll both be available afterwards for questions. So to set the stage, the Chatham-Kent Family Physician Recruitment and Retention Task Force was developed back in 2020, and it really is to coordinate our efforts and develop strategies of recruiting new family physicians to the Chatham-Kent community and maintaining the ones that we have here. So you see our members that include our 4 primary care teams, our Chatham-Kent Ontario Health Team, Ontario Health at Home, our municipality, as well as the Chatham-Kent Health Alliance. We're also fortunate to be members of the Southwestern Ontario Recruitment Alliance, which is SOPRA, and this has really leveraged our opportunities to recruit more international physicians that are wanting to explore Ontario. And this is a coordinated effort to put Southwestern Ontario on the map and then drilling it down to Chatham-Kent specific when we're given these opportunities to attend career fairs, because many of them are quite costly. So being able to coordinate our efforts through Southwestern Ontario really puts Chatham-Kent on the map. So setting the stage of some of our stats, we are seeing, oh goodness, sorry everyone, there's the presentation. No, sorry, let's bear with me here. Or can Judy, you help me maybe? Okay, thanks everyone. So currently we're seeing about 17,877 patients that are still unattached to a primary care provider. And so based on the current estimates, we would need an additional 12 physicians to attach that unattached population. And that's given about a 1,500 patient roster size. So as we look ahead, we have many physicians who are age 60 or over that are classified in that retirement age. So they make up about 25% of our physician workforce. So if we have those expected retirements occur in the next 5 years, we would need an additional 20 physicians to attach the unattached populations as well as absorb their current patient roster. So there still is the need for physician recruitment, attracting new physicians to our community, and having clear succession planning for physicians who are looking to retire. So further to the patient unattachment, we have, as I mentioned, 15%, and that makes up about that 17,000 number. But in the good news, we have about 84% of our population now is attached with a primary care provider. So that is something to celebrate. So some outcomes and impacts that we've seen in the past year, thanks to your gracious endeavors last year in 2024 have increased our municipal incentive to $25,000 for any new physician coming to practice here with that 5-year return of service, have hired a dedicated physician recruiter, which is why I'm standing in front of you here today. We've engaged with over 100 candidates and counting. We've hosted 22 medical learners, and those are learners that are from Chatham-Kent that are studying abroad or locally, and they're on their medical journey. So they're coming back home for the holidays is what we call it, and we want to connect with them to offer a token of our appreciation and stay in touch throughout their medical journey in hopes that they return back here to practice when they're all finished. We've hosted 5 site visits with potential physicians. We've attended 5 resident career fairs, both locally and nationally. We've supported the Healthcare Connect Camp, which is put on by the Chatham-Kent Health Alliance. And this is for interested high school students who are wanting to pursue medicine. As well, the Chatham-Kent Health Alliance hosts a Discovery Week, and this is for first-year medical students. So again, really trying to integrate early on with high school and medical learners to plant the seed that Chatham-Kent is a fantastic place to come back and live, work, and play. And we are continuing to host resident engagement activities. So we have 6 spots with the Schulich School, and we have 3 first-year residents and 3 second years. And so they are here with us for 2 years completing their residency. And we know that we have a really strong opportunity to connect with them and hope to recruit them here when their residency is finished. So we have really leveraged our engagement opportunities with them by taking them out and highlighting Chatham-Kent. We've gone for hikes in Rondeau, we've gone to the beach, we have done many different activities, and we're continuing to do them in the upcoming year as well. As you will see as well on the report, we have recruited 4 net new physicians last year, which has leveraged $100,000 of the reserve that is put in place. And our Chatham-Kent Family Health Team, the Blenheim site, has utilized the $20,000 for capital in increases and renovations. So Dr. Agundape has joined us in Wallaceburg with the CK Fit Chatham-Kent Family Health Team, Dr. Parent in Wheatley with the Thamesview Family Health Team, Dr. Shan Sudin at the Thamesview Family Health Team here in Chatham, and Dr. Harwood out in Chatham-Kent at the Blenheim site. So if you see any of those names or physicians, please give them a nice warm welcome to Chatham-Kent. So the budget cost and allocation, we've broken it down so you can see exactly where the money is being put to use. About $65,000 is dedicated to our staffing, $10,000 to the conferences and job fairs. And again, that is to put Chatham-Kent on the map. For every career fair that we're not at, we're losing out on those one-to-one engagements with potential physicians. Local engagement, again, with our residents and the retention efforts with our physicians. That is about $7,500. Our marketing and promotion falls at about $4,200, and recruitment overall operations is about $6,000, and that includes our subscriptions and our job postings and the different platforms that we need to utilize to try to recruit physicians. So some challenges and learnings. We've recognized that it's not just a Chatham-Kent shortage. It is a province-wide shortage of physicians, and recognizing as well that the retirement pressures will certainly start to put a strain on our healthcare system if we're not able to find a replacement for their rosters. Retention challenges as well that are influenced by broader system factors that are outside of our control. For example, we have a local physician who is going to be leaving our community because her partner has been mandated back with the province's return to work order. And so they have no other option because the commute will be too long, unfortunately. So they are having to relocate. So some of those broader systems that are outside of our control, but certainly will trickle down and have an impact on our healthcare system. And certainly the growing competition with other insignificant incentives that other communities are offering to physicians that may draw other physicians away, including practicing within the U.S. So what we've learned is that relationships really do matter. Early engagement works. I will argue that our community connection absolutely has a competitive advantage. I'll say that the Chatham-Kent community, even just seeing the chamber filled here today, I think really just shows a strong connection that we have here in Chatham-Kent. And I also want to mention that sustainable recruitment requires net new physicians. So although the stats that we showed, about 84% of our population has a primary care provider, that is also due to some of our physicians expanding their practices. So while that is fantastic and we want to celebrate that, we also want to recognize that that isn't sustainable, that will continue to put pressures on those physicians, and it is not a long-term solution. So really investing in bringing net new physicians to our community. Looking ahead to this next year, really going to continue strengthening our retention strategies with our physicians and residents, continuing to expand resident engagement, highlighting Chatham-Kent, showing them every corner that we can while they're here, continuing to advocate for provincial responsibility. Again, drawing back to some of the that example I just provided and the competitiveness that we also share within communities as it relates to incentives. Continuing to increase our social media engagement and continuing to promote Chatham-Kent not just as a place to work, but as a place to live. So with that, I want to say thank you for your time and attention. And I also just want to end with showing my deep gratitude and appreciation to every physician who practices here in Chatham-Kent and for their extraordinary care that they provide. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions? Thanks for the great update, and look forward to seeing that 84-point-something% go up. So, thank you.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Item 17, Health and Human Services.
17A, Encampment Advisory Committee Appointments Recommendation. So, Mr. Mayor, we have two recommendations in the report. The second one is appointment of councillors. And this afternoon, I did send out the process to council with regards to how we will choose our representatives. I'll just quickly go over that so the public is knowledgeable of how the process will go this evening. It will be a bit quiet as we go around and collect the ballots and so on, but this is what we do at the beginning of each term for a committee. So the process to be followed will, one, the clerk will announce the council members' names who have expressed an interest in the committee, and the names will be put up on the screen. The clerk will ask if there's any other members of council wishing to put their name forward for the committee. Each candidate will have an opportunity to address council for a period of not more than 2 minutes to say a few words regarding why they are seeking appointment. The order of speaking will be determined by alphabetical order of last name. Number 4, each member of council will be not being considered for a particular appointment will be allowed no more than one question per candidate. And 5, the vote process will proceed as follows. All members of council will vote by way of voting a public vote, which is a ballot with their name on it. The clerk will collect the ballots after each round and read the votes aloud, stating the councillor's name that was submitting the vote and the candidate whom they voted for. C, the process will be two separate votes. The successful candidate will be determined by the most votes received. In the case of a tie where there's no candidate receiving the most votes, the candidate or candidates who receive the fewest number of votes will be excluded from the consideration, and voting will continue in rounds more than once if necessary until one candidate has received the most votes. The first vote will be, as per the terms of reference, for one councillor from the ward affected by the current encampment. In this case, it will be Ward 6 councillor. Once the councillor representative is determined, we will move on to the second vote for the general representative, not needing to be from the ward of the encampment, and all councillors who have put their name forward will be included in the second vote except for the successful one from the first vote. In the case of a tie, the same process will be followed as indicated above, and once both councillors have been chosen, a motion will be required to appoint them to the Encampment Advisory Committee. So, council, you have ballots in front of you right now. Oh, Mr. Mayor, there's a question.
Councillor Finn.
Due to some recent changes, I'd like to withdraw my name from.
Okay. So we will remove Councillor Finn. Is there Councillor Story?
Thank you. I'm satisfied with the roster, so I'm happy to remove my name from consideration as well.
Councillor Doyle?
I will do the same.
All right.
Making
And
it
then there were
easier and
three.
easier.
Councillor Juneville?
I will remove my name as well.
Okay, and then there was two. Are we not going to have any more removals, are we?
Perfect. So therefore, Mr. Mayor, we'll put the motion for both 1 and 2 up on the screen for council direction.
Councillor Finn and Councillor Juneville, can I get you to move this, please?
Happy to move that one.
And so seconded.
Any questions? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor C. McGregor?
Yes.
Councillor Anderson is gone. I'm missing one more. Oh, that's right. Okay, all votes are in, sorry. All votes are in, motion passes 15-0.
Well, that just saved us 45 minutes. At least, yes.
17C, motion of Councillor Jubenville regarding harm reduction services at Pathways on Park.
Councillor Jubenville?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. You want me to read the motion? Yes? Do you want me to read it, the full thing?
Yes, sorry, go ahead.
Council directs staff to immediately review the alignment of harm reduction service delivery at Pathways on Park, including the distribution and use of harm reduction supplies, supervision, containment, and disposal practices, impacts on surrounding neighborhoods, and calls for service. Review contracts with tenants to make necessary revisions regarding harm reduction supplies. And further, that staff report back to council within 30 to 60 days with options to modify, supervise, relocate, or restrict supply distribution in a manner that reduces neighborhood impacts, ensure resident and public safety, mitigate displacement of substance use into public spaces, and further, that council requires ongoing public reporting on neighborhood impacts and service outcomes related to Pathways on Park.
Councillor Doyle, can I get you seconded, please?
I will second that.
Okay, Councillor Jubenville, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I just want to be clear because I think there's some misconceptions that this motion does not restrict or remove access to those who are living at Pathways on Park to remove the harm reduction access. This motion merely asks for the cessation of delivery of these said supplies to Pathways on Park, which is a drug-free municipal housing complex. It also asks for further measurements and results to be compiled of access and use of harm reduction to those living with addictions. I also want to be clear that I do support the CK drug strategy and some aspects of the harm reduction pillar. I would like to thank the representative from ROC for her deputation and her opinion. And also thank you to Dr. Malachowski and Larry for their deputations. Based on conversations I've had with those who work in addictions and recovery, medical professionals, and those with lived experience, having an overabundance of access to supplies like needles and pipes and the like is not the answer to help those living with addictions to help them get clean. I do have a few questions for our medical officer of health.
All right. Go ahead. Do you want me to make some comments? Or
yes, I just have a few questions. Thank you for coming and being available to answer our questions. I guess the first question I have is, are we required by the province to deliver harm reduction supplies like needles and the pipes, are we required to actually hand deliver them to places like Pathways on Park? Is that something that is required by the province for us to do?
Yeah, you know, the way I would think about this is that I'm appointed by the Board of Health, and I report to the Board of Health, and the Board of Health members, many of them are counselors. My appointment, the medical officers of health, this legislature contemplated that the medical officer of health would faithfully execute the Health Protection and Promotion Act, its regulations and standards. And the regulations and standards require us to distribute harm reduction supplies. Any asymmetry, any difference in the way public health services are administered would require, from my vantage point, I would not be able to accept any asymmetry of delivery of services, because I think that's inconsistent with the Health Protection and Promotion Act. Metaphorically, I'm not a lawyer, but I have the advice of legal counsel here with me, and I do depend on legal counsel on many issues related to the Act. Receiving public health services is the same as receiving fire services or ambulance services, and I think that anything that would impede the equal access to vital life-saving public health services is not consistent with the Health Protection and Promotion Act. So the answer is yes. You cannot restrict, or institutions cannot restrict, the access of public health services to any person by where they live.
Okay. So that would mean we are required to deliver harm reduction supplies to different various areas across Chatham-Kent. That is a requirement, that we have to deliver them.
Yeah, I want to be, medicine is about saying the truth. So yes, the answer to that is yes. Since I'm charged with interpreting the execution of the Health Protection and Promotion Act, subject to the legal process, that the Board of Health is required to deliver services to all people, all public health services with equal access, including harm reduction supplies. And not in any way to speak for the Board of Health chair, but I think we agree on this, that it's not within the purview of myself or the Board of Health to restrict access to those supplies, because that's what the provincial rules require. It's pretty explicitly stated.
Okay. Okay, thank you for that. Personally, I just feel like it's splitting hairs between removing access and delivering it, because saying that we're not going to deliver it doesn't mean that we're removing the access. But I guess, you're the professional, so that's your interpretation of it. But I look at it differently. Removing access would be saying they can't have it there, whereas saying we aren't delivering it they're two different things. But I'll leave it with what you have stated. So public health is required to deliver the harm reduction supplies to the Pathways on Park. But that isn't being done by public health. It's being done by like a contractor, Rock. So how is that working? If it's not public health, who has commissioned Rock to do this?
Yeah, if I could share with council, and maybe I have a bag of tricks here. I'm not the neatest guy, as you might see. Stethoscope, harm reduction supplies. I think my assistant packages for me, thankfully. But I could share with you this. This is a bottle of vaccine. The province buys this vaccine through its Central Purchasing Authority. It directs the Board of Health to distribute it. I'm charged, and again, Board Chairman McGregor, I'm charged with making sure that this is delivered to doctors, clinics, intermediaries. Patients receive them. Vaccines save lives. The Board of Health the province buys, this is a harm reduction kit. The province buys these. I'm required by law, through the Board of Health, to distribute this to people who need them. We may not, and I think it's good that we're here to talk about it, because it's good for people to know what they are. Medicine is about, in part, talking about things that are uncomfortable. One of the things we learn in first year in medical school is you got to deal with a lot of things you never thought you'd want to deal with. I grew up in a conservative home. My parents never talked about sex. Somehow I came around, right? So, so medicine is, in fact, about dealing with uncomfortable things. And if my mother was watching this today, I'm sure she'd be surprised that I supervised the distribution of harm reduction supplies. But just to know what harm reduction supplies are, this is the needle. You give out needles like this. You give out smaller needles like this. The staff don't drop things, but I do. We give out tourniquets, which you might use to draw blood. We give out cookers, where people cook fentanyl. The reason I show this to you is that we're not endorsing, none of us at the Public Health Service are endorsing the underlying conduct. What we want people to do is we want them to live one more day. Just one more day. The most important part of practicing medicine is to live one more day. And by extension, the Board of Health is charged with making sure people live one more day. Do I think this is good? Do I want my kids to be using fentanyl? No. But if they are using fentanyl, I want them to be safe. And the reason I want them to be safe is because if you take a dirty needle, you cook the fentanyl, or you cook a drug, and you inject it, and then I give it to someone else and they inject it, they could get hepatitis, which is inflammation of the liver. Inflammation of the liver can cause death. It can require a liver transplant. If they get HIV, they can give the next person HIV. And so what we're trying to do, and this is the taboo in medicine, we're just trying to do the best we can. Medicine is not about, and this I think is a hard thing to accept, medicine's not about curing people. That's what medical students think. When you graduate, you realize medicine's about making people feel better, live longer, and hopefully fight another day. Because a lot of diseases aren't curable. Now, why do we give out these syringes? It's just not about the people using substances. No one should die of HIV because they're using fentanyl. It could be my son. It could be Mr. McGregor, quite honestly. It could be me using fentanyl in my office. And I've seen it all. But the thing is that if Mr. McGregor got HIV from using fentanyl, that means that his wife could also, she didn't use any drugs, she could get HIV, she could get hepatitis C. Now, that's not an abstraction. If I could share with you the number of people who got hepatitis C in Chatham-Kent in the last 10 years, it's 500. It's 500 people. I was just talking to the epidemiologist this morning. So that's one in every, 500 people? Is that right? Got maybe 1 in 200. Maybe my math isn't good. Maybe I should have been a mathematician. But the fact of the matter is that some of them were using drugs. But I would hazard to guess some people who got hepatitis C were the sexual partners of people who were using drugs. I was talking to a colleague of mine today who's Canadian. He's a professor of public health at Tufts. And he was an infectious disease specialist. I remember the days when HIV spread to women, mostly women, from bisexual men and men who were using substances. So when we take away harm reduction supplies, we're not only affecting the people who are currently using drugs. And those people aren't homeless. They're not all homeless. There are people in all walks of life. And I have known physicians who have used illicit drugs. But we're also affecting their sexual partners. We're taking away from them something that medicine can do to prevent other people from getting sick. And my friend who's a professor of public health, and I've never dealt with this, but he said you also have to think of the potential children. Man, it doesn't always have to be man. Man gives HIV to their partner, and their partner then has a baby. Now you have a baby born with HIV. So I would close with this, and I'd prepared some remarks. If you'd indulge me just a little bit more. As uncomfortable as it is, the Public Health Service also gives these out. Condoms. We give them out to young people, old people. We give them out for free. I talk about it all the time. Sometimes they come in these colorful packages. Sometimes they come in nondescript packages. I know this is uncomfortable to talk about sometimes, but giving out condoms doesn't enable people to have sex. I think anyone who's had sex would know that if there were condoms or not condoms, they would probably still have sex. It doesn't mean that we don't want people to use condoms when appropriate because it prevents pregnancy, sexually transmitted diseases. And so I think the argument that somehow giving people harm reduction supplies enables them, makes them more likely to use illicit substances is not correct. It's not consistent with medicine. Most people are addicted, and it's hard to accept this, but I think it is the accurate reflection, which is that when you're just about to use a drug, when you're craving a substance, you're not thinking necessarily with rational thought. You're not saying, oh, maybe I won't use this because I don't have a clean needle, or I won't use this because I don't have a clean cooker. And I think that that's not representative of what I would understand medicine to be. It's a change. I understand people who feel differently. I really do, because my own son would probably disagree with me, and he'd be up here disagreeing with me now. So I understand this. I'll close with this. I recognize their harm reduction approaches. There's a diversity of perspective of that. But I also think that leads to understanding and accommodation, and hopefully we'll have a constructive advancement of the health of the community. So I hope that answers your question, Councillor, but I'm happy to take any more questions.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. I'm not sure if you answered the question about when the requirement for us to deliver the harm reduction through public health. So how is it, the agency that's doing it, I believe is ROC, how is it transferred over to them? How does that work?
So it's not unusual in clinical practice, and our lawyer here will correct me on this, but using intermediaries to deliver public health services is a common thing. Like we don't do most of the vaccines in the health district. Family physicians and clinics do. We deliver the medicines to them. Karina can correct me on this, but for syphilis treatment, we obtain the drug at the public health service and we store it, but we distribute it to physicians' offices to do that. So the fact that ROC acts as an intermediary, and to my knowledge, there are many other intermediaries, Karina's correcting me, that in itself is not an extraordinary item. Now, there is some component of accountability and quality assurance, and we want people to be using those supplies going the right channels. But it's not unusual. It's not unusual to make those distribution approaches.
Okay, so I'll just use ROC because they're here. So you oversee them. Public health oversees how they distribute this.
Well, they have an agreement with the Public Health Service. They're an independent agency. They have to act consistently with provincial rule and guidelines. And if they, and not to be overly bold, but I don't think the Board of Health would accept anything differently, and I wouldn't, that they have to follow the standards, rules, guidelines of a contractual agreement.
Thank you. That's all the questions that I have. Thank you very much.
Councillor Doyle, anything to add?
Not really at this time. I guess I'm kind of on the same side as Councillor Jubenville, where the guidelines that we got from public health, it just says we have to provide them. It doesn't say we have to deliver them. So I think that's the issue here, is where it's supposed to be a drug-free area on municipal property. I get inside the cabins is different, but if we want it to be transitional housing and have it a drug-free zone, why can't they just go and get it 2 blocks away as opposed to us actually delivering it there? It's not saying they can't have the harm reduction supplies. It's just how we're going about giving it to them, and then as well with some extra data and stats and more transparency for the public, and possible ways to improve things. So
if I could, would it be okay if I commented on that?
Yeah, sure.
So when you think of health services, we try our best to get services to people as close as and as convenient to them. So there was a time in Ontario, I don't know if there was a facility in Chatham-Kent where mammography would be delivered by mobile vans, where vans would go and deliver mammography services. Sometimes family physicians or clinical services are delivered closer by mobile transit. I don't think it's anything that would not be consistent with good practice to deliver medical services in a way that's most convenient to people. And so I don't see that as any deviation from clinical practice and clinical outreach.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Harrigan, followed by Councillor B. McGregor.
Thank you, through the mayor. Thank you, Doctor, for your comments and for your perspective. I really appreciate it and think that it's really great for some of our fellow councillors who are not on the Board of Health to hear some of the conversations that we're having at the Board of Health fairly regularly. I think we just had a harm reduction education session. I think maybe not the last council or Board of Health meeting, but the one before. So, so that's really great. Can you talk about your role as the medical officer of health and how your expertise is positioned alongside the Board of Health? So, for example, we've heard from my colleague that perhaps he disagrees with your interpretation, but like what legally are you charged with doing in terms of your role of medical officer of health and bringing your expertise to the Board of Health?
I think there are two primary responsibilities, and maybe more as the Board of Health renews my contract or doesn't, so all kidding aside. The first is to faithfully execute on the Health Promotion and Protection Act, all its regulations and standards, and to make sure that those directives are appropriately enforced. Sometimes it requires some judgment on my part, but we work with legal counsel in areas that we think there might be perceived ambiguity. So the first responsibility is to meet all the statutory and regulatory direction of the province, and that includes reporting, inspection of restaurants, minimizing communicable diseases. And then I think the second part of my job, our jobs as medical officers of health, is to advance the health of communities and to speak on matters and to articulate in our capacity as medical officers of health to speak on matters of public health and to advance those goals. There's one third sort of subsidiary responsibility. Sometimes there are individual level clinical care decisions, and most of the clinical care is provided by the nursing teams, but sometimes I have to just work to provide a little bit of guidance on those items.
Great, thank you. The next question I have is, actually you had spoken a bit to it, but talking about hepatitis rates, there are other bloodborne infections that harm reduction certainly is looking to mitigate. We heard from one of our deputations that we've seen a decrease in hepatitis rates in Chatham-Kent recently in the last year or so. Would you attribute some of that to the harm reduction programs, the mobile outreach, and perhaps even some of the expansion of harm reduction that has happened in Chatham-Kent?
Yeah, I think it's one factor for sure. You know, if I had to think of of conceptualizing this, just imagine, I think we had 17 new HIV cases in the past decade. I think that's what the epidemiologist told me this morning. If we didn't have harm reduction, if we didn't have this distribution of safe supplies, how many more cases of HIV would we really have? So I think that a fair characterization is that the distribution of safe supplies mitigates or reduces the risk. But my guess is there are many factors that probably contribute to that reduction.
Great, thank you. And then the next question I have, and apologies if it's a little tongue-in-cheek, but is the use of substances, you gave examples of fentanyl, for example, or other illegal substances, is that permitted at the public health site where harm reduction is distributed in the clinics, for example? Like, could somebody get harm reduction supplies and then stand in the waiting room at the public health clinic and use substances?
Yeah, Karina's here who could answer the administrative part of this, but no, I don't think that we want people to be using substances on the site where we provide clinical care for other people. You know, I think there's a complicated issue because at one level, we want people to use substances safe. We'd prefer people don't use substances at all. Without a doubt, we don't want people to use illicit substances. I think it's a public health matter, and as parents and as siblings, but we also want use of substances to be in ways that minimize the risk to the person using and minimize the risk to other people. And that's the balancing act in public health policy.
Right, and I think, so my colleague had noted earlier that, Pathways on Park is supposed to be, there's rules around substance use in the public areas, so it doesn't make sense to distribute harm reduction in places where you shouldn't use we shouldn't be consuming illicit substances, or there's rules around that. But also, there are pharmacies in Chatham-Kent who deliver harm reduction supplies. You're not allowed to use illegal substances inside of a pharmacy. Public health clinic delivers harm reduction. You can get harm reduction supplies in a number of healthcare institutions. Some of our OHT partners deliver harm reduction. Just because you can obtain or harm reduction services delivered, it's not an open invitation to simply use in public spaces. We certainly, again, alongside principles of harm reduction, don't want people using alone, but just because that's being distributed, it's not essentially encouraging people to use. And I really appreciate Dr. Nessathuri's comment about how we really just want people to stay alive for one more day, and that's what harm reduction is doing. I just wanted to note a couple of best practices around harm reduction. Some of these best practices come from recommendations around a panel across Canada from organizations that provide harm reduction services. These include recommendations on distribution to distribute based on quantities requested, that do not require exchange programs, that provide multiple locations and distributions through multiple sites and through peer networks. These are best practices in harm reduction, and I want to applaud our medical officer of health, our public health, and all of the partners that we have who work to distribute harm reduction, because in Chatham-Kent, we aspire to practice these best practices. These are evidence-based best practices. They're not the opinions of somebody on social media. They're not the opinions of somebody who's just thinking about it. People are welcome to have their opinions, but on council, we have to make decisions based on evidence, based on research, and based on recommendations from experts that we have in our field. So I want to thank the medical officer of health for taking the time to share some information. And I'm not supportive of this. I think it's part of public health mandate and belongs with the Board of Health. I do think if there was an offer to modify some of the recommendations, the questions about reporting back to council around issues or 311 calls that we've had in the area are certainly something that we can monitor. But when it comes to distributing harm reduction, I think that as a council, we really need to get behind all aspects of our community drug strategy. So thank you, Mayor Caniff.
Councillor B. McGregor.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. I know that this has been a consistent message in our community around the benefits of harm reduction, and while tonight was very educational, we've had that opportunity many times for that education. So it was in March of 2024 that we unanimously endorsed the Chatham-Kent drug strategy and committed funding towards a coordinator. September of this year, we had another presentation in council chambers that outlined harm reduction in our community, talked about some of the same benefits you've mentioned tonight, and reinforced that messaging. We've had those conversations around the table at Public Health many, many times. We've seen those conversations at the Community Safety and Wellbeing Committee, which is a group of stakeholders across the community, different demographics, different outcomes, who have also endorsed harm reduction. And we've consistently heard that feedback of why it's important in the community. So it's great to have another opportunity to hear that again. One of the things that I think is helpful to correct, and you spoke about it tonight, is this maybe assertion that harm reduction increases rates of relapse or increases drug usage. Can you speak to the evidence around harm reduction's use in a pathway to recovery and the role it plays in impacting drug use or relapse?
Yeah, I don't think that, and I think this is pretty well established, it's just not my personal opinion, having access to safer supplies, and that's true in almost all public health interventions, having access to more safely using substances is not in itself, is not going to encourage more use. The condoms is the easiest example because it's on the face of it obvious, right? So I don't think it has any impact on current use or the risk of future use. I don't happen to believe that's an accurate perspective. I understand why people may think that, because a lot of things in medicine that seem obvious, really, when you look at the evidence, is not so clear. So I think the real goal to help people is to keep them alive for one more day, and if it's one more week, that gives them hopefully the chance to be at the point where they want treatment, and ultimately with treatment and support that they get clean and sober. And I think that's the real goal of the public health service. We're not there to cure, I don't think the goal of medicine is to cure everybody. I think it's to try to mitigate illness as long as we can until we can get more definitive treatment, if that treatment is out there.
Thank you, and I think that's an important message, and as Councillor Harrigan said, the approaches to do that are steeped in evidence that has grown over time. So it's not about, as has been mentioned, reading a social media post or one anecdotal story. Good practice is built in mountains of evidence and in individuals who have worked in those spaces and provided that evidence over time. And that's what the harm reduction approach in our community is built on. I certainly think that there's always opportunities to communicate about this more often. I think every time you've been here and spoke about it, it's been well received. Every time we've had these presentations, I think it's another step in destigmatization in our community and in better understanding why we need to invest in these areas. So I know, and I don't speak on behalf of all the Board of Health members, but I know we'd be interested in communicating more to Council about statistics in our community, statistics around infectious disease, outlining the process for harm reduction supply distribution in the community. And I think the right place to have those discussions about how we want to do that is at the Board of Health table. So I would move to refer this motion to the Board of Health.
Can I get a seconder for that? Councillor Harrigan? Any, Brock or Councillor McGregor, anything, comments about this?
Yeah, I think that we would be more than happy to discuss this at the Board of Health table. It's a topic we discuss often, and I think there's a lot of information that's provided to the community at different times that we could share more often to Council if that's something that is of interest. And I think that through this discussion, we've heard that is an interesting topic that we should bring back more often. So I would like to discuss that at the Board of Health table and bring back some of the data on community benefit and community impact.
Councillor Harrigan, anything to add?
No, I don't have anything to add. Really appreciate that this is a Board of Health issue when it comes to harm reduction, and think that the staff at the members of the Public Health would do a great job in providing some of that information.
Any other questions about Councillor Finn? Well, no, we're going to deal with the referral. Yes. Is this allowed? Councillor. Madam Clerk,
Councillor McGregor, we'll add you to the list. Yes, this is in order. In the procedural bylaw, you're allowed to motion to refer. So this now the conversation will go to the referral. If it passes, it's referred to the board. If it fails, it goes back to the main motion.
So I'll take questions on the referral, because we're going to vote on the referral to refer to public health or. I can still go to them, the people that are on my list to speak about that, and then we can go to the referral.
If you'd like to go to the folks on your list, I can make my referral motion once they've.
All right, I've listed here 3 speakers, Councillor Finn, Bondi, and Anderson, prior to this motion. So I'll go to those 3. And Carmen, sorry. So I'll go to 4 people. So I'll go to Councillor Finn, Bondi, Anderson, and Councillor C. McGregor, okay? And then we'll deal with the referral. Thank you. Councillor Finn, go ahead.
I'm approached all the time with regards to questions with regards to the harm reduction. Where in Chatham-Kent can people get harm reduction, first of all?
So I want to be exhaustive but also accurate. So can I ask Karina, our director, to comment on that?
Thank you. Through you to Councillor Finn. There's a long list of places where people can receive
supplies. So through our public health office at King Street, you can get them through, and apologies if I miss any, the RAM Clinic, our community health center in Wallaceburg, and in Chatham, through a mobile delivery service that's administered from Positive Pathways. So outside of the outreach that ROC does, there's another mobile delivery service through ROC in their outreach model. Those are the ones that are coming to me right off the top of my head, but there is...
Okay, so,
yeah.
not that I know of anybody out there. If somebody in Bothwell or Thamesville, Wheatley, Port Alma, Merlin, who are they calling if they need harm reduction? Because it'd be similar as to what we're hearing. They have the mobile unit because people can't get into the health clinic or...
Sure. So I failed to mention there are a couple pharmacies on our list as well in Blenheim and in Wallaceburg. And then there is, like I mentioned, the mobile delivery service. So they can call and place an order and that can be delivered right to their door. That's through Positive Pathways, who's the company that, or the organization we contract to help provide the service locally.
Do you have the phone number for that?
I can provide it
Okay,
to council
thank you.
off the top of my head.
Second question. Are all the harm reduction kits that are distributed the same? Like same amount of needles, same amount of burners?
So there's
same-
varying kits that can be ordered. So it depends on what they're looking for. So there's safe ventilation supplies, there's needles. It just depends, but but like a pack of 10 is packaged the same at all sites if you order that specific package.
Okay. And when somebody finds any of the drug paraphernalia, the burners, even the rubber bands, who are they calling to come pick it up? Because I wouldn't want my kids picking up any of it.
Absolutely. So if it's found on municipal property, they can call 311 customer service and they will direct that to the appropriate place for that to be picked up. If it's found on private property, it is the responsibility of the property owner to pick that up. We are always happy to provide teaching and information about how to pick needles up safely, and we have that information all on our website as well.
Okay, where are they taking needles and drug like the burners,
So
I'm
they-
not just gonna throw it in the garbage and
Nope. Yeah, so they can take that to, pharmacies will take back needles, they can take that to our site at King Street, we'll take those back. There's a few locations that will take that.
Where can they pick up the empty tubes?
So those, they can pick them up at our King Street office. They are also handed out when harm reduction supplies are delivered. Single or personal sharps containers are also included in those packages, and people receive those for their use supplies.
Say if I'm finding one out inside my house, I'm not gonna keep running and trying to find a glass jar to take it in.
Sure,
So-
so, yeah, I mean, you can use any puncture-proof container if you have an empty peanut butter jar or a glass jar, anything that is puncture-proof, just to get it picked up.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bondi, followed by Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. My first question was answered, I think. So somebody can call in if they don't have a car and just have these kits delivered, like if I live in an apartment?
That's right.
Okay, great. Second question came from a constituent just moments ago. Do we drop any of this stuff off at schools, and not just high schools, but like the colleges that are in town?
Not that I'm aware of, but if someone was living in residence at a school, there's nowhere to say that we couldn't, but.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. If you can just call in the delivery, it doesn't matter if you're like.
Yeah, I don't know exactly where all the deliveries are going, and it is intended to be anonymous in some sense, so that we're not taking like the name of the person at that location to drop it
Right,
off.
so they're not in like the guidance office?
Right.
Okay, that should answer the question. Thank you.
Councillor Anderson, followed by Councillor C. McGregor.
And through you. I appreciate having this conversation, and we've had it several times. I know through the Board of Health, we've had this conversation many, many times. And I will say it is something that I agree. It's a difficult conversation to have, and sometimes I do struggle with a lot of aspects of it. So while I do appreciate this motion coming forward, I also understand that this is really not something that we have the right nor the wherewithal to make that decision around this table. I think one way, I called my dad, who's been a recovering alcoholic for 12 years sober, this year actually, and I asked him what he thought about it and about harm reduction, specifically for illicit drug use. And, he said to me, he goes, they could have an open bar at an AA meeting but it's up to me to not take that drink. So he encouraged me by saying, you know, instead of having the conversation of whether harm reduction is harmful or not, maybe the conversation needs to be what supports are there to get people on the straight and narrow and to allow them to feel confident and deal with their trauma and get them through these things so that they can stay clean. And maybe that's more the conversation that needs to be had. And when that happens, actually, is by utilizing the services that we have. And a lot of times, in a lot of these dark places that people go to, they go to get the harm reduction, and that's when they start to see the services that we do offer. And that's where the pathway can start for them to get on the road of being their best self. And I think about it a bit as we talk about like illness prevention and health promotion. And, you know, I think about when I was a nursing student and I was a PSW in long-term care, you know, we would have a foot care doctor come in and they would do foot care on a patient that doesn't walk. And I would think, you know, like at that time I was so young and I'm like, why are we doing foot care on someone that's not even going to walk? Well, it was to prevent later illnesses, whether they were a diabetic and then they were going to get a full foot ulcer and then they were going to end up in the hospital. So we do things to prevent harm and to prevent further deterioration of a person. And I guess when I look at harm reduction, that's kind of how I look at the safe distribution of them using safe things. So while it's not going to make them walk again, right, as say the person that's in the wheelchair, it will prevent them from having other things that will come from it, like HIV, like hepatitis C, like all the other infections that they could potentially get. So while I understand and I certainly appreciate and respect this conversation, I think that there's a reason why there's certain things that we put in place that maybe not everybody is supposed to understand. And I really, really hope that those people that don't understand never get to a place that they actually do understand why they need harm reduction. And I look forward to this coming back to the Board of Health, and I'm honored to sit on that board. And having those further conversations and seeing where the gap is and seeing if there is more information that we need to gather or that we just need to be better with our communication and communicating what we do know and the data that we are collecting to the community and to council. So I won't be supporting this tonight, but I definitely will support the motion to refer back. Thank you.
Councillor C. McGregor.
Thank you, and through the mayor. And I won't reiterate a lot of what was said from my fellow Board of Health members because I have agreed with every conversation that I've heard. I would like to take the moment, though, to, even though I could not support this motion as it is presented, I would like to thank Councillor Jubenville for bringing this to the attention and to allow us to have this conversation around the table and to help to bring some of that maybe understanding or clearing up some misunderstanding within the community or even around with other councillors who don't completely understand the responsibilities of where things go back to the province and where we handle things at public health. I originally had asked to speak because I was going to speak to the referral, so I will just finish with that, and that I very much support that this go back to public health and for us to be able to go over this, to have these conversations and figure out additional ways that we can help support the community, maybe the neighborhood, or come back with conversation that can come back to council and even with maybe possible recommendations of how we can improve in that manner. So I will, I'll leave it at that, and thank you.
Any other questions regarding the referral? The mover, seconder, anything, any further on that? Okay. With that, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor C. McGregor?
Yes.
All votes are in. Motion passes 15-1.
Okay, we have no notice of motion. Closed session reports. Councillor Hall, and can I get Councillor McDonald to second them?
Thank you, Mayor Canada. For confidentiality in closed session meetings, closed session meetings of council are held to discuss sensitive matters such as legal issues, personnel matters, or property negotiations. These sessions are governed by strict confidentiality to protect the interests of the municipality and individuals involved. Council members and staff are legally and ethically bound to maintain discretion, and any disclosure of information discussed in closed session may result in penalties or legal consequences. Closed session report for Monday, February 9th, 2026. Council received information on legal advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege with regard to harm reduction services at Pathways on Park, Section 239-2F of the Municipal Act, and I so move. Mayor Caniff.
Seconded.
Seeing no questions, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor C. McGregor?
Yes.
Councillor Wright, Councillor Doyle? Sorry. No worries. All votes are in. Motion passes 16-0.
Communication items. Councillor Jumeville, you wanted to bring forth 1C?
Yes, I just wanted to draw attention to this just for the public's knowledge. I would just like to thank some of my fellow colleagues who were visible at Roma, and they presented to Minister Todd McCarthy, the Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks, and about York 1 and Dresden, and the mayor wrote a follow-up letter, so I'm just going to read a little paragraph from the letter that Mayor Caniff wrote to him. I'm writing today to follow up on several of the items raised during the meetings and to continue the conversation on how we can work together. As you heard from our councillors, I believe it was McGrail, Story, and Finn who attended. Yeah, thank you. And staff that attended the Roma delegation with you. A clear roadmap for the municipality and community is needed. From our perspective, this would include how we will receive information about what York 1 is proposing, how information will be shared from the province, whether there will be community engagement opportunities, and how provincial decisions will be made. As you have heard from the municipality and community, we have not had meaningful communication from York 1, and as a result, we really need support from the province to establish what the process will look like for engagement and decision-making. We value our partnership with your ministry and look forward to constructive dialogue in the weeks ahead. So thank you, Mayor, for writing that follow-up letter.
Thank you, Councillor. Can I get you to move all the communication items, and C. McGregor, can I get you to second that, please?
I so move.
Any questions? Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Non-agenda business. Councillor Story, followed by Councillor B. McGregor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make a quick, share some thoughts about two people we recently lost in Chatham-Kent. Recently, Chatham-Kent lost two champions of our community suddenly and unexpectedly. Darren Winger was our Regional Development Advisor of Tourism, Culture and Gaming, Heritage Sport, Seniors and Accessibility, many different activities, many different funding opportunities and initiatives. Since 2002, he was a real champion of Chatham-Kent. He organized the annual Volunteer Recognition Awards here in our community, which I'm sure all of us have probably been involved with at some point. As long as I can remember, he organized this event. Most years I get a message from him asking for someone who could sing or play the national anthem. One of those years that was me. So we're gonna miss him for that event this year. He really did take recognizing and acknowledging the contributions of volunteers in our communities very seriously. And over the past more than 20 years, he likely helped hundreds of different nonprofits from across Chatham-Kent secure impressive amounts of funding, countless programs and services. Staff and facilities are here in Chatham-Kent because of Darren's advice and advocacy for us at the provincial tables. He was also a longtime Windsor Rotarian and truly embodied Rotary's motto of service above self. He would often come to our Chatham Rotary Club meetings whenever he was in town, where he and I would often trade the latest and greatest news about sports, politics, Rotary news, you name it. He was a great conversationalist. He loved his wife, Lori, his many Rotary exchange students he mentored, cycling, cats and dogs. He had both, and craft beer. He was a Windsor boy at heart, but he championed Chatham-Kent at every turn. And then we also lost James Snyder this week. James started working for the city of Chatham in 1982 as its community development coordinator and worked for the municipality officially for more than 20 years, but he never stopped working for the municipality unofficially ever since. He was, if you knew James, you'd know he was a quirky fellow. He had a very, very dry sense of humor. You often saw him riding his bike around downtown. He loved books, movies, flat white coffees at local coffee shops, and was an endless font of information, and spoke often of his love for New Zealand, where he recently passed away. He spent more time than most on social media, constantly sharing information and opinions, encouragement, and constructive criticism about local issues. He was particularly engaged with the affordable housing sector and the arts and culture scene in Chatham-Kent. I'm sure he would have been watching tonight's discussion with interest. Just in the last few days, I received both Facebook messages and emails from James on both subjects. I'm sure there will be a community celebration of James's unique life or a fuller accounting of the many ways he contributed, things like units of affordable housing he helped facilitate the formation of the Chatham-Kent Arts and Culture Network. Just to name a few, almost always behind the scenes to Chatham-Kent that will be shared with a wider audience, but I wanted to make note of his passing tonight. Both Darren and James were true community Chatham-Kent champions, and ironically, they knew each other quite well. And I think they had more than one coffee together when they were both in downtown Chatham. Their passing leaves a major void that will be nearly impossible to fill, and I share my condolences with their family, friends, and colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor B. McGregor.
Thank you. Just wanted to remind everyone that February 24th to March 4th is Workforce Week. It culminates in the Workforce Week Job Fair, March 4th at the John D. Bradley Center from 11 to 7. So that's being put on by CK Jobs, which is the Employment Ontario program within our Department of Employment and Social Services here in Chatham-Kent. So that job fair is a pretty big deal. I've gone to it a couple of times. There's 80 booths on site showcasing a lot of local businesses and employment opportunities. The Skills Ontario Trades and Tech Truck, which has some cool hands-on activities and simulators for youth age 12 and older to get some experience with the skilled trades, participation from educational institutions, post-secondary education and training pathways, some live demonstrations of the trades as well. It's always well attended, and if you're looking to get connected with employers in the community, it's a great opportunity. Thank you.
Councillor Scotchy.
Just one quick, I just want to, where other place you'd rather be on your 50th birthday than at a council meeting, Mayor Caniff. So you always wish councilors a birthday with they're at a meeting, so happy birthday and hope you have a good 50th year.
Thank you. I feel young again at 50. Thank you. Council plus HST and a couple others, yeah. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. And just really, really quickly, I had a family phone call, so I had to leave during the family physician recruitment and retention. So I just wanted to give my thanks to that crew again and the great work that they've done. Everyone is extremely happy with having Dr. Parent and Wheatley, and it's really bridged a gap in our healthcare system that we were missing in our rural space. So thank you very, very much.
I've got one as well. Just every year for International Childhood Cancer Day, February 15th, ChildCan encourages many people as possible to stay in their PJs to show solidarity with children facing a cancer diagnosis who rarely get out of their pajamas. As February 15th, 2026 falls on a Sunday, they'd like to encourage your school or business to show kids affected by cancer some love on February 13th or any day in February. Seeing no others, we'll do the first and second reading of the bylaw. Councillor Harrigan and Councillor Sagacci, going to get you move those, please?
So moved, Mayor Caniff.
Seconded.
Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Third and final reading, Councillor Wright, Councillor Doyle. Can I just move those, please?
I'll move that.
I'll second it.
Anyone opposed? Motion carried. The ending of council, Councillor Hall, and can I get Councillor Finn to wrap it up, please?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I move that Chatham-Kent Council adjourn to its next meeting to be held on Monday, February 23rd, 2026, and that Chatham-Kent Council authorize itself to meet in closed session on that day to discuss any matters permitted by the Municipal Act.
Happily seconded.
Anyone opposed to closing it up at 8:15? Seeing none, have a great night, everyone. Stay warm.